Welcome everyone, thank you for tuning in. Today we will be covering Fracture, as mentioned in the last video. This video is the second video in my series of map callouts and to get to know the maps in Valorant. Fracture is a very unique map in Valorant. I'd say it's probably the most unique map, considering the fact that when you spawn in as a defender, the only way we refer to mid, it doesn't even have a mid really, because defenders spawn in the middle. And so this usually causes for easy rotations on both sides, like A site and B site, which is this side right over here. And so Fracture doesn't really have a mid in this case, and there are some other maps that don't really have a mid either, but this is the most unique map in this case because it is a very unique structure, I would say. And the reason why I would say this is because in the previous video I also didn't cover some more technical aspects of maps. In this case, I would like to bring up the fact that there are 4 extremities on a map in Fracture. There are only 4 extremities. Now, what are extremities? Well, as an attacker, let's start off on attacker spawn right over here. And as I take fall damage, you see that attackers start off on attacker spawn right here. And so, because we only refer to extremities as the first line of contact between enemies, and usually orbs are in this contested area, and we refer to these extremities as A main and or A hall, but usually we refer to this this path for an attacker onto A site as A main or A hall. And so now we move on to A site. Right over here we have the most common spot to plant, which is right over here since it's considered the safest spot for cover and whatnot. So this would be the default plant on A site. Now we have stairs because there's stairs. And as in the previous video, since if you want to go back to the previous video and to look at the lingo that I have mentioned before on the previous video, we have top site right here. So now we have top site because this is the top of the site, right? So now we move on to another extremity. So we covered one extremity of 4 on Fracture, which is A main and A hall. Now we move on to the other side of Fracture, which is drop. This is called a drop because you would have to drop down onto a site in order for you to gain access to the site. So this is known as a drop, and it says so on the map, a drop. Now we move on to we move deeper into this extremity of Fracture, which I normally refer to as dish or satellite dish because there's a giant satellite dish, right? Giant satellite dish. We refer to this spot as a dish. And so now this covers the both extremities for a site. As you can see, Fracture doesn't really have a middle because defenders spawn in the middle, and so they can have easy access to rotations, but for attackers, they have these rope systems right over here that takes you all the way across the map, like so. And they would mostly, like, attackers would also have easy rotations in this case due to the fact that the zip line exists right over here. But now, to move on to the extremities for B site. This is going to be a lot shorter of a video due to the fact that the layout of Fracture is actually relatively simple. It might look complicated, and to be honest with you, this is the most confusing map for a new player, like in my opinion. As a new player, I had the most trouble learning Fracture. But in reality, it's actually a really simple map. in terms of its layout. So now we move on to one of the extremities on to access B site. We have right here B bench because there's a bench right over here. We have bench. We have a bench. And as we move deeper into the site, we have the contested extremity. As you can see, there's an orb right here. We call this area right over here, this general area, right over here, arcade. It's pretty self-explanatory since it's also on the minimap. It's listed as arcade. So if enemies were to call out a site, we would call out a player in this area, we would refer to a person here as arcade. So there would be a person arcade, bam, you know where to look, which would be this area right over here. Now we move on to up here, which you can see this rope will gain you access to this part of the map on B site right here. So we call this part of the map tower because it says so on the map. Like I said, it's usually it's mostly based off of the minimap, and a lot of new players can also learn the map callouts by themselves if you just look at the large minimap. But a lot of people just don't really feel bothered to do so, and so I'm making this video to make it easier on you and to, I guess, give you a tour of Fracture. So we refer to this as towers since it's at an elevated area of B site. And before I move on to covering what B site is itself, there's also another part of the extremity that takes you to the other side of B site, which would take you down here. So down here we have access to now tunnel. So this is tunnel, or other players like myself like to refer to this side as, or refer to this area as sewer, because it's pretty gross down here if you think about it, right? It's gross. And so we call this area sewer. So it's either tunnel or sewer. Both are the same thing. So it is okay if you call it one or the other because it's generally referring to the same part of the map. It's known as tunnel or sewer. So now we move on to the last extremity of Fracture, which is tree. We have tree right over here. It's called tree because it's pretty, there's like trees over here, right? But a lot of people refer to this general area, like a lot of people don't really refer to it as tree. Some people refer to it as deep B main because right over here we have B main right here. So this is the last extremity that will gain you access to the site. Now we refer to the site itself. We have default because this is usually the most common spot to plant the spike. It's behind cover, and defenders will usually come from CT, which is right over here, since, you know, CT is where defenders come from. Right here is defender side spawn. Which is mid, and so if they want to gain access to B site, they go through this path right here. So this path is normally known as CT, and same thing for mid as well, or not mid, for A site as well. This path right here would lead to also CT. I kind of skipped over A rope and A sand over here, but this is normally known as A sand because this part is sandy, right? This I like to refer to this side as sand because in this extremity you will have A main right here in A hall, but there is also this door that when you walk through it, you will have access into sand. So I am walking into sand right now. And now we have right here, which is rope, or, well, yeah, it's, I would say it's rope. It's the most accurate call out for that. But now we have this rafter right over here. I'm not exactly sure why we call it a rafter, but that's the most general call out to how we refer to a rafter as. And a rafter is just an elevated spot, right? An elevated spot above some place, you know, like there are multiple examples of rafters, like for example on Icebox on a site. Once I go cover that, I will cover the rafters there as well. And there's also rafters on another site, or another map called Split, which will be the last map that I cover since it's actually rotated out of competitive queues, and it's now the least relevant map in the game. But I will still cover Split for those of you who still want it, right? So so that's all of A side. Now to move on to the rest of B. So now we refer to this side as Canteen. I'm not exactly sure why it's called Canteen, but but that's what it says on the map. And so whenever there is this little diagonal side aside from CT, because there's two paths to B side, is through CT and through Canteen. So this right here, I am walking on Canteen right now. Honestly, that's mostly it, right? We have default, or I also like to call it pocket because there's a little pocket in the wall. So whenever I refer to pocket or default, it means the same thing. You know, like it's okay to refer to there's many parts of different maps that have two different callouts, but they usually refer to it as the same thing. So now we have general B side itself, and we have ramp and stairs, like so. So yeah, that's, oh yeah, and the last part right over here, we like to call this side generator, because there's this generator right over here, and some defenders like to take cover behind this thing. And as an attacker, if you want to call out a defender that is hiding right over here, we would refer to a player that's playing this spot as person playing generator. So that's honestly it for Fracture. Like I said, this is a very simple map in reality, because of the fact that it might look complicated, but it's actually very simple in the fact that it has 4 extremities. And obviously there's like sewer, which like links the two, and yeah, that's honestly it. We have the following map I will cover is Ascent. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys later.